Okay, so like think about it for a second, right? Like when was the last day you went without using plastic in some way? I mean, seriously, it's everywhere, isn't it? And I'm not just talking about like the obvious stuff.
Mhm.
It's in our clothes, our electronics, heck, even in our food sometimes.
Yeah, and when you look at it from a global perspective, the sheer volume of plastic waste we generate is kind of staggering. But for a country like India, with its massive population and rapid development, the challenge is particularly acute. It's not just an environmental issue anymore.
Yeah, you're right. It's tied to so many things. Public health, resource management, economic growth, it's all connected. And for anyone who's serious about understanding India's future while understanding how we deal with plastic is essential.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. We're going to really dig into this topic today.
Yep, we've been poring over this fascinating article from the Hindu, which, by the way, if you're prepping for the UPSC, the stuff is pure gold. Seriously, it's got insights that are relevant for both mains and prelims, covering environment science and tech governance, you name it.
So basically, we're going to break down this complex issue into two key parts. First, we'll explore some of the exciting new advancements in plastic recycling technologies, stuff that honestly gives me some hope for the future.
Yeah, and then we'll get real about the challenges India faces in actually managing all this plastic waste and what steps we can take to make things better. So let's kick things off with the cool stuff, right? Bioengineered microbial plastics. What are those all about?
All right, so imagine this. We use synthetic biology, basically like engineering tiny organisms like E. coli, to create plastics from renewable sources like plant-based glucose. And get this, these plastics are designed to decompose naturally.
Hold on. So instead of plastic hanging around for centuries, it just breaks down like a banana peel. That sounds incredible.
Right. And the thing is, it's not just some far-off idea. Researchers in Korea have already developed a microbial plastic that's supposedly as strong as nylon, but still biodegradable. Like, that's a game changer, potentially.
No kidding. So is this stuff actually being used anywhere?
It is. Check this out. Kerala is already making eco-friendly water bottles from potato starch. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? And Japan is developing this biodegradable plastic that dissolves in seawater. They can even adjust its strength for different applications. Like, think about the impact on ocean pollution.
Wow. So from packaging to medical devices, that's amazing.
And here's the thing for our UPSC folks. Developing these bioplastics directly tackles our dependence on fossil fuels and offers a real solution for reducing plastic waste in the long run.
So it's like a win-win for the environment and for sustainable development. Okay, so let's talk about fair trade plastic recycling. This is all about bringing ethical practices into the recycling game.
Exactly. Think about the informal waste workers who already play a huge role in collecting and sorting plastic in India. These models, like Plastics for Change, they're all about integrating these workers into the formal system. Fair wages, safe working conditions, transparent supply chains, the whole 9 yards.
So it's not just about recycling, but also about social justice and economic empowerment for these often marginalized communities.
Exactly. And it makes the whole recycling process more efficient and traceable, which is good for everyone. The article mentions that Plastics for Change is actively diverting plastic from oceans and landfills while providing livelihoods for these workers. It even connects it to SDG 12, which focuses on responsible consumption and production.
So it's like a triple win: environment, social justice, and economic development. But scaling this up across India, that's going to be a huge undertaking. Okay, so let's move on to something a bit more high-tech. Chemical recycling. Is this the same as just melting down plastic and remolding it?
Nah, it's way more advanced. Chemical recycling, or as the pros call it, advanced depolymerization, involves breaking down plastic polymers into their basic building blocks, monomers. Think of it like taking apart a Lego structure and getting all those individual bricks back.
Okay, I'm with you. So what can you do with these plastic Legos?
While you can use them to create brand new high-quality plastic again. And here's the kicker. It can handle even low-grade or contaminated plastic that normal recycling can't really deal with. Companies like Pyrowave and Carbiosils, they're leading the charge in this tech.
So we're talking about actually closing the loop on plastic waste, not just downcycling it into lower quality stuff. And this brings us closer to a circular economy, right? A system where resources are reused and waste is minimized. Okay, that's exciting stuff. What about AI-driven waste sorting systems? How do those work?
So think about this. AI and machine learning can sort through mountains of trash with insane speed and accuracy, way better than humans can. They identify different types of plastic and separate them out super efficiently. It's especially useful in those huge urban material recovery facilities, the MRFs.
So it's like having robot eyes that can spot the difference between a milk jug and a shampoo bottle in a blink, and that helps reduce contamination in the recycling process, right?
Right. And that means higher quality recycled material and a more economically viable recycling industry. The article mentions Indian companies like Recycle and Nipri who are already using this tech alongside global players like AMP Robotics.
So India is not just catching up, we're leading the way in some areas. That's awesome. Okay, now let's talk about something a bit more controversial. Plastic to fuel. I've heard about this, but isn't it kind of polluting?
Well, it's a complex issue. So this process called pyrolysis, it uses high heat in an oxygen-free environment to break down plastic waste into fuel oils or chemicals. Think of it as like squeezing energy out of plastic that can't be recycled.
Okay, so instead of ending up in a landfill, this non-recyclable plastic can actually become a source of energy. The article mentions some pilot projects in India by JL and IIT Delhi. Apparently, IIT Delhi even figured out how to make diesel from single-use
Right.
plastics.
But here's the thing. There's still debate about the overall environmental impact, like how much pollution does it create? Is it really energy efficient? These are questions we need to carefully consider.
So it's not a silver bullet, but it's a potential solution, especially for dealing with plastics that we can't recycle any other way. Speaking of solutions, let's talk about deposit refund systems. Have you ever seen those machines where you put in empty bottles and get some money back? That's basically what we're talking about.
Yeah, they're surprisingly effective. Basically, you pay a small deposit when you buy a drink in a plastic bottle or container. Then when you return the empty container, you get that deposit back. Simple but brilliant.
The article mentions that Germany has a whopping 98% recovery rate for plastic bottles thanks to this system. That's impressive.
Right. It shows that people are way more likely to recycle when there's a direct financial incentive. Plus, it keeps those bottles out of the environment, which is a win for everyone. Now, adapting this to India would require some careful thought given our existing informal waste sector, but it's definitely worth exploring.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about a more direct way to reuse plastic. Plastic roads and infrastructure. This is something I've heard a lot about in India.
Yeah, it's actually been quite successful here. The idea is to shred plastic waste and mix it with asphalt to make roads. It makes the roads more durable and resistant to water damage. Plus, it's a great way to put a lot of plastic to good use.
The article says that India has already built over 3 lakh kilometers of roads using this technology, even in tough areas like border regions. That's a huge amount of plastic diverted from landfills.
It is. It's a practical solution that addresses both waste management and infrastructure development. But again, there are long-term considerations. We need to make sure these roads are stable over time and that there's no risk of microplastics leaching out into the environment.
Okay, so we've talked about the exciting innovations, but now it's time to get real about the challenges India faces in actually managing all this plastic waste. And the first one that jumps out is ineffective waste collection and unreliable data.
This is a huge problem. While official figures might paint a rosy picture, the reality on the ground is often quite different, especially in rural and peri-urban areas where waste collection is patchy at best.
The article mentions a significant discrepancy. The government claims 95% waste collection coverage, but independent studies suggest it's closer to 81%. That's a massive gap, meaning a lot of plastic waste is just slipping through the cracks.
Right. And what happens to all that uncollected plastic? It ends up in open dumps, polluting waterways, and harming the environment. This lack of accurate data makes it really hard to develop effective policies and allocate resources where they're most needed.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. You can't see the full picture. And this brings us to another major problem, the widespread practice of open burning of plastic waste.
Sadly, it's a common sight across India. And it's not just an eyesore. Burning plastic releases a whole cocktail of toxic chemicals, including some really nasty stuff like dioxins and furans. These pollutants wreak havoc on air quality and pose serious health risks.
The article throws out some sobering numbers. About 5.8 million tons of plastic waste are burned in India each year, and another 3.5 million tons just leak out into the environment. That's a recipe for an environmental and public health disaster.
No doubt. It's clear that we need to move away from this harmful practice and towards more sustainable waste management methods.
Now, in 2022, India took a big step by banning certain single-use plastics. But the problem is, they're still everywhere.
Yeah, the ban was a good move in principle, but the implementation hasn't been very effective.
Well,
Enforcement is weak, and these banned plastics are still cheap and easily available, so they're still a huge part of our waste problem.
it's crazy that even after the ban, 43% of India's plastic waste is still made up of single-use items. It shows how tough it is to change habits and shift markets even with good intentions.
Exactly. And it highlights the importance of not just enacting policies, but also ensuring they're actually enforced on the ground. And then there's the issue of extended producer responsibility, or EPR. The idea is great, but it's not really working as intended.
Yeah, EPR is basically saying that companies that produce plastic products should be responsible for managing them at the end of their life cycle, like taking them back and recycling them. But the article points out that there's a serious lack of monitoring and accountability in India's EPR system.
Right. Lots of smaller companies just ignore the rules.
Yeah.
And there's no centralized system to track how much plastic is being produced, collected, and recycled. So it's a bit of a free-for-all.
The article says that only about 60% of plastic waste is recycled, and most of that is handled by the informal sector, not by the companies that produced it. And certain types of plastic, like those multi-layered pouches, are especially hard to recycle, even with the best intentions.
It shows that we need stronger enforcement mechanisms, better tracking systems, and maybe even some incentives to encourage companies to really take EPR seriously. And then there's the whole issue of infrastructure. We just don't have enough facilities to handle all this plastic waste.
Right. Many of our existing waste management systems aren't equipped to deal with the volume and variety of plastic waste we're generating. We need more and better material recovery facilities, or MRF, but we also need to start separating our waste at the source, like in our homes and offices.
Absolutely. Source segregation is key. And the article mentions some pretty shocking stats, like 77% of urban waste is dumped untreated, and there are 10 times more uncontrolled dump sites than proper sanitary landfills in India.
Yikes. Okay, so we've got a lot of work to do on the infrastructure front, and then there's the whole issue of microplastics. These tiny bits of plastic are everywhere, and we're only just starting to understand the potential risks they pose.
Microplastics are like the silent threat. They form when larger pieces of plastic break down, and they end up in our water, our food, even the air we breathe. We're basically ingesting plastic without even realizing it.
Yeah. The article mentions a study that found microplastics in 83% of Indian tap water samples. That's scary. And they're also showing up in our soil because of things like wastewater being used for irrigation. We don't even know the full extent of the long-term impacts on human health and the environment.
Right. And there's growing concern about the impact on marine life, too. Fish and other creatures are ingesting microplastics, which can lead to starvation, entanglement, and all sorts of problems. It's a serious issue that needs more research and attention.
And finally, there's the challenge of finding and adopting eco-friendly alternatives to conventional plastic. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, there are lots of promising alternatives out there. Biodegradable plastics, plant-based packaging, you name it. But they often come with higher costs, limited availability, and issues with scaling up production. It can be tough for small businesses and vendors to make the switch.
The article highlights how much plastic waste is generated by the e-commerce and food delivery industries. Those sectors are booming, but they rely heavily on cheap, single-use plastic. Finding affordable and scalable alternatives is crucial if we want to make real progress.
Yeah, absolutely. We need more research and development support for these eco-friendly alternatives, and maybe even some incentives to encourage businesses to adopt them. Okay, so we've talked about the problems, but the good news is there are also potential solutions. The article outlines several measures that India could take to improve its plastic waste management game.
Let's dive into those. The first one is decentralizing waste management and empowering urban local bodies, or ULBs. What does that mean in practice?
Basically, it's about giving more power and resources to local governments to manage waste in their own communities. It allows for more tailored solutions that take into account the specific needs and challenges of each area.
The article suggests using existing funding mechanisms like the 15th Finance Commission grants and the Swachh Bharat Mission Urban 2.0 to support these efforts. It also emphasizes the importance of training municipal staff and getting citizens involved in waste management. It's about making it a community effort.
Right. Local ownership and participation are key. People need to feel empowered to make a difference in their own neighborhoods.
Another big idea is strengthening extended producer responsibility, or EPR, and using technology to track plastic waste more effectively.
Yeah, this is all about making sure companies are accountable for the plastic they produce. We need better monitoring systems, maybe using things like QR codes or blockchain to track plastic from production to disposal. And we need to enforce the rules with penalties for companies that don't comply.
Imagine a system where every piece of plastic has a digital trail so we can see exactly where it goes and who's responsible for it. That would be a game changer.
It would. And it would help us identify weak points in the system and make sure everyone is doing their part. Okay, so what about the informal waste sector? We can't forget about the thousands of waste pickers who already play a crucial role in collecting and sorting plastic.
The article talks about formalizing their work and integrating them into the formal waste management system. What would that look like?
It means recognizing their contributions, providing them with fair wages and safe working conditions, and maybe even offering them benefits like Social Security and training. It's about empowering them and making them a part of the solution.
So it's about social justice, but it's also about making the whole system more efficient. These waste pickers have valuable skills and knowledge that we should be tapping into. The article suggests linking these efforts to existing government schemes like DNLM, which focuses on urban livelihoods.
Right. It's about creating a more inclusive and sustainable waste management system that benefits everyone. Okay, so we've talked about empowering local governments, strengthening EPR, and formalizing the informal sector. What else can we do?
Well, the article emphasizes that banning single-use plastics is only half the battle. We also need to make sure there are affordable and readily available alternatives.
Exactly. Bans only work if people have viable options. We need to incentivize the production and distribution of eco-friendly alternatives like biodegradable plastics and plant-based packaging. And that might mean providing support to small businesses and entrepreneurs who are developing these solutions.
The article talks about the potential role of government initiatives like Startup India, the MSME Ministry, and KVIC in supporting these efforts. It's about fostering an ecosystem where sustainable alternatives can thrive.
Right. And then there's the issue of source segregation. If we can get people to separate their waste at home, it makes the whole recycling process so much easier and more effective.
The article suggests using a carrot and stick approach, like offering rewards to households that consistently segregate their waste, maybe through discounts on property taxes or utility bills, and maybe using technology to track compliance and create a little bit of healthy competition between communities.
Gamifying waste management, that's an interesting idea. And it plays into the whole behavioral economics thing where you nudge people towards positive behaviors through incentives and feedback.
Okay, so we've got incentives for households. What about the infrastructure side of things? We need better facilities to handle all this separated waste.
Absolutely. We need more and better material recovery facilities, or MRFs, equipped with the latest technology for sorting and processing plastic waste. These could be developed through public-private partnerships or integrated into smart city projects. And again, we need to make sure these facilities are properly staffed and operated.
The article mentions funding schemes like the Smart Cities Mission and AMIR 2.0 as potential sources of support for these infrastructure projects. It's about making sure we have the right tools to get the job done.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Decentralization EPR, the informal sector incentives, alternatives infrastructure. But the article also proposes one more interesting idea: developing localized plastic action plans at the district level.
That makes sense. Different districts have different challenges and resources. A one-size-fits-all approach probably won't cut it.
Right. These plans would be tailored to the specific conditions of each district and overseen by the state pollution control boards. It's about taking a more nuanced and targeted approach to plastic waste management.
So it's about empowering local communities to develop solutions that work for them. And finally, the article suggests establishing circular economy innovation hubs. What are those all about?
These hubs would be like centers of excellence for all things related to plastic waste and the circular economy. They would bring together researchers, entrepreneurs, and industry experts to develop and test new technologies and solutions.
The article mentions potential collaboration between the Ministry of Environment, Forest, and Climate Change, the Department of Science and Technology, and the MSME Ministry. It's about fostering innovation and collaboration to tackle this complex challenge.
It is. And these hubs could also play a key role in disseminating knowledge and best practices to different regions and communities. They could be real drivers of change.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that plastic waste is a huge challenge for India. But it's not insurmountable. We have innovative technologies, emerging policies, and a growing awareness of the problem.
Right. And for our UPSC aspirants, this topic is a goldmine. It touches on so many important themes: environment, science, and technology governance, sustainable development, social justice. Understanding this issue and the potential solutions is crucial for anyone who wants to contribute to a better future for India.
Exactly. And for all our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you a deeper understanding of the complexities of plastic waste management in India. It's not just about memorizing facts and figures. It's about understanding the interconnectedness of the problem and the potential pathways forward.
It is, and it's a call to action. What role can each of us play in reducing plastic waste and promoting sustainable practices? How can we advocate for policies that support a circular economy and protect our environment?
It's about individual responsibility, collective action, and innovative solutions. It's about building a future where plastic is a resource, not a threat. If you found this deep dive helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And let us know in the comments what other topics you'd like us to explore. And remember, all the information we've discussed today is based on a recent article from The Hindu, so go check that out for even more insights.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.